I've got Dr. Bhagat with the Broken Body series. Good morning, Dr. Bhagat.
Good morning. How's your phone?
I'm good. I'm tired. I had a high school reunion yesterday.
You're too young to have high school reunion.
Pardon?
You're way too young to have high school reunion.
It's been 16 years, Dr. B.
You know, when you get those high school reunions and you look at your friends, you think, gosh, she looks really old. And then you forget that they're probably thinking the same thing about you.
Can I say something? Yesterday we all say to each other, listen, we look the same. It's like we put our pens down yesterday. We look so vibrant, young, like it's the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my life. Yes, so what are we talking about today, Dr. B?
Today we're ending the month in terms of nutrition and lifestyle and diet. And we're going to talk about the end result of a poor lifestyle and diet, and that is obesity. You know, it's such a complex disease involving basically, I guess, excessive amounts of body fat. But it's not, you know, people tend to think these days cosmetically. It's not just a cosmetic concern. You know, it's a medical problem that increases the risk of so many diseases. I was trying to count them, and I stopped at about 60. There are more than 60 many causes of complications of obesity. I mean, today, just a few, you know them: heart disease, diabetes, blood pressure, arthritis, cancers, you name it. You know, of course, never mind the psychological impact, you know, especially when you're young and if you're at school, you get bullied. If you're a teenager, nobody wants to hang out with you. It's a lot of stuff. So the psychosocial impacts are also huge. And it's really important. And in terms of statistics, people may think, you know, this is a Western disease. It ain't. So, you know, I was trying to look at some statistics. And pre-COVID, the city of Gauteng did an estimate of obesity amongst its young black women between the ages of 25 and 60. 60% of women in Johannesburg are considered overweight. And, you know, we're not far from that city. And we probably eat the same junk that they do. And so I don't think that we're an exception to this global pandemic. So, in fact, the WHO estimates that obesity is the new it's just the same. It's the new cancer on the block. You know, literally, it's the new tobacco on the block, if you like. It has so many complications. And unfortunately, you know, Zoo, one of the issues with obesity is it's not just a personal issue. You know, we are inundated, as you know, by processed foods and advertising and you know, packaged items. And I always say, you know, it's not just the fault of the individual. It's the fact that, you know, we have increasingly tighter budgets. You know, it's cheaper to buy a packet of, you know, fresh chips rather than a bunch of oranges. It's cheaper to buy, you know, a takeaway Nando's rather than to cook healthy food. So you know, So you know, it's difficult in terms of the food industry making it much more difficult. You know, believe it or not, you know, in some places in our country, a bottle of water is more expensive than a can of Coke. So, you know, these things have an impact in terms of the reach of most people to try and eat healthy. So this is also an impact. And the other thing also is when doctors say to a patient, you know, if you need you need to exercise. You really have to get into context as to where that individual is. For example, you know, if you don't have any walkways, if there are no street lights, if there's no curbs where you can walk on in case you run over a zombie, you know. So there are a lot of things that become almost transcend the individual and become almost a political issue. You know, is city council, is government, is local government, is the government at large doing things to encourage cycling and walking and you know, public transport. So there are a lot of issues that come to obesity, and we as doctors are teaching our students, don't simply blame the individual. Look at the individual and look at the circumstances in which they've become overweight. And a lot of people say, you know, Naka, you know, my mother is big and my father is big, and they may have been big because they also ate a lot. It's not genetic. And then people often blame, you know, I've got heavy bones and I come from a big family. It's not generally that. It's just that probably a poor diet and poor choices start within the family. And then, you know, if you know, you're doing regular takeouts, if you're eating processed foods, or mom and dad buy that stuff, you know, you can't help but be of the same persuasion in terms of your weight. So there are a lot of issues that have got to do with obesity. But the commonest causes of obesity, obviously, are things that people know. But with obesity and being overweight, there's what we call cognitive dissonance. Basically, people know what they should do, but they don't do it. You know, so everybody knows that physical inactivity, overeating, you know, diets high in carbs. We know that the higher your carbohydrate or starch intake, the shorter your life. We know that. We know that the higher your fat intake and your protein intake, the longer your life. we'll come to that in a minute. But and of course, frequency of eating. Concept. As urbanites, you and I, we eat and we sit and we eat and we drive and we eat and we, everything.
You're not moving.
You're not moving. And so we need to eat 3 meals a day. And the idea of time-restricted eating, which people call intermittent fasting, is simply that, don't eat because it's lunchtime. Eat when you're hungry rather than when food's presented to you,
Exactly.
And then, of course, the big one in terms of particularly during this pandemic, has been the psychological issues to do with eating. A lot of people were sitting at home. They were locked down. They were shut down. They were stressed. You can't go out. You can't exercise. So what do? You eat. You snack. You watch TV. You try new recipes. So over the last 2 years, people have gained significant amount of weight, particularly in children, because they've been, the schools have been shut. And of course, we know that the people who are stressed tend to eat, and they eat badly because they reach for comfort foods. Because having a bar of chocolate or a donut or some fresh chips actually makes you feel better because it produces short-term some happy chemicals. The dopamine and the serotonin in the body goes up temporarily, and you pay the price, but it makes you feel good for a short time. So don't forget the psychosocial impact that may relate to why you're actually eating badly. So these are important issues in terms of obesity in our population.
How is it best to prevent or treat obesity? Because like you're saying, most people use it. I think for me, I said to somebody yesterday, it's more mental when it gets to food. When you're not feeling good, you indulge in something that will make you feel better. So how is it best to treat obesity?
Google. I'll give you a really interesting thing that happened. There's this big company, Google, the company in the United States. What they did to entice their Google employees to stay within Google, they offered them lots of freebies, including eat as you like, when you like, and what you like. So in Google headquarters, the kitchen was always open 24 hours, and they had all sorts of things. And what happened is, of course, people gained weight. And so what Google did is they did a very interesting experiment, and this is one of them. What they did on the long trail of foods that are available, right at the beginning of the queue, right until almost the end, they produce all the healthy foods, the salads, the steamed veggies. So by the time you got to the end where there was maybe some lamb stew, whatever it is, your plate was already full.
Yes.
And so the take-home message there is try and make sure that what you put in your shopping basket is healthy, because out of sight, out of mind. If you have a couple of packet of crisps and biscuits in your pantry, and you'll say, "Well, I'm not going to eat them," you will one day. You'll have and even in your fridge. What's in your fridge? Look at your fridge, inspect it, and see whether it's healthy. Because you can bet your bottom dollar or pula, if there's a fizzy or soda drink in there, you're going to take it. If there's coffee and sweets, you're going to use. So out of sight, out of mind. To consume less bad foods, less processed foods, less sugary foods, eat more servings with vegetables, make sure that the side portion is your meat and your starch.
Yes.
Plenty of dietary fiber, your morocco, your ginawa, your levedele, we've talked about this until the cows come home.
Yes.
Focus on a low sugar index food. So things that, particularly this season where we have mangoes, have a small portion of fruit. Fruit is a dessert. So treat it like a dessert. Don't do this fruit salad and fruit smoothies. They're not good for you. And get the family involved in your journey. There's nothing wrong with everybody eating healthy food. And of course, last but not least, engage in regular aerobic exercise. But it's really important, Zoo, to remember that you cannot exercise your way out of a bad diet.
Definitely.
Those people that go to the gym and they're heavily overweight, but they're training like crazy, and they leave the gym and they're sweating like crazy.
Yeah, but then they go and eat.
Go and eat, and then they eat the rubbish things. So these are really important issues, and it's very important to know that the continent of Africa is rapidly urbanizing, and unfortunately, even in our society, it appears that families think that they've arrived in society when they can go to a KFC or a Nando's. You haven't arrived. You've actually gone backwards. So don't think that the fact that you can afford a Nando's or a KFC means you've arrived in society. You've actually gone backwards. So go back and eat what our ancestors ate.
All right. Well, Dr. B, we are out of time. And I really wanted to get into this, but I'm sure everybody knows how dangerous obesity is, and I am excited to hear what we'll be talking about next week.
Well, next week we're moving on to the consequences of obesity.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the diseases, and the first one on the block is diabetes. We're going to talk about diabetes, which is rapidly scourging our nation.
That is
so
awesome.
That's the topic of next week.
All right. Thank you, Dr. B. Have a great
Bye,
afternoon.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Bugger and I closing up the show.